The criminal justice system seems to be failing a lot of people, and the judicial processes are costly and also taking forever. And many people who feel aggrieved do not see any alternative except to take the laws in their hands. In my context, this has become a real issue where people believe that they cannot follow due process in order to get justice. At the same time, people also feel that there's a lot of injustice being done to so many young people because they're being incarcerated wrongly and without sometimes following due process. Kenya experienced in 2007-2008 post-election violence. This post-election violence is being blamed on polarizing rhetorics, either through media, radio stations, vernacular radio stations specifically, that were allegedly spewing hate. And these hate messages continues to polarize the communities. As we struggle with inter-ethnic animosity and violence, or potential for violence, people are still crying today for justice. Many people want to believe that Kenya is reconciled, that people are happy, that now we can cope with inter-ethnic animosity. The answer is no. I believe that we need to put in place some restorative processes and practices that can help the communities, even if not reconciled, at least to promote and cultivate resilience. Because if they feel that a sense of justice was not served, chances of people taking up arms and fighting each other again in the next cycle of election is very high. The residents of Kisumu have, over several years, experienced a lot of police brutality. The latest one being the much publicized killing of one protester in Kondele by the police during the 2007-2008 elections. Many people believe that since this killing was captured on camera, definitely this case would stand any test of time. Of course, the case was taken to court and was dismissed because of a technicality, something that the uncle of the deceased young man cannot understand. And many people coming from this context cannot understand. This kind of cases are not unusual. As a matter of fact, many people think it's common. The criminal justice system never seems to be working in the way that it's supposed to. What kind of justice are we looking for? And by the way, what is justice? When I had a conversation with many people in this context and I was asking, what would satisfy you? Many of them were still hurting because of what they had had to go through. The people of Nyakach, some of the elders were very bitter because they lost their loved ones. Not only did they lose their livestock, but they lost lives. It's not just about the Nyakach people. If you cross the border, the Kericho side, they have lost some of their loved ones as well. And in the Nandi side, of course, the issue of numbers is one that is being debated. Which community lost more than the other? And so we ask the question, is it really about how many people were killed? Or is it important that even if one life is lost, we should be finding long-lasting solutions to stop these killings from happening over and over again? I believe that restorative practices embedded in the traditional practices that we used to have and processes can provide a way out. Whether the solutions will be satisfying is another thing. However, there must be a start. We must provide some sort of healing. And there needs to be a bridge between the offenders and the survivors. We believe that in this environment, in contexts where there are lack of alternatives to livelihoods and the harms being caused are due to either people wanting to amass wealth, or in the process, in the case of the border of Kisumu County and Nandi County, cattle rustling, which was traditionally an exercise that people engaged with, have now been turned to a stock theft. And in the process of the stock theft, people get killed. When people die, criminal offenses cease being just criminal offenses. They become communal atrocities. And therefore, more often than not, we find that communities engage in inter-ethnic or intergroup fights, which leads to more death and more revenge, and the cycle continues. Are the restorative practices and processes put in place good enough to help the communities to disentangle themselves from these cyclic processes that are very painful and continue to traumatize them? We ask ourselves, therefore, are there better alternatives to criminal justice system? Can we do something different that will help people feel a sense of justice? Or can we find retributive traditional systems that used to help communities and individuals deal with the harms that are caused? As peace builders, we've been struggling to find ways and means with which we can support communities to deal with the harms that have been caused by institutions, or in some cases, harms that have been caused by individuals that are part and parcel of those communities, and as well as violations that have been caused by law enforcement apparatus and personnel. This is what is pushing us as local capacities for peace to reinvent and to re-engineer traditional models and the current theories and practices that are being practiced in different parts of the world, to reinvigorate the goodwill of the community and the desire of the individuals to find non-violent alternatives of seeking justice. At this point, we felt that restorative practices can be the best option to criminal justice system. Combining the efforts of the state and the community processes, as well as individual efforts, is paramount. That's the place to start. Talking about individual efforts, we have seen cases where people have been wronged and they take the initiative to go and apologize and say, well, I know you wronged me, however, we are still brothers. That brotherhood, that love, that desire to maintain harmony and peace and coexistence in communities is a good example of restorative practices that can be built on. I believe that where there is a will, there is a way. I also know that we cannot take for granted the efforts that are being made. Of late, we have seen the reemergence of the Council of Elders. They all have a significant role to play when it comes to providing some sense of justice when an injustice or a violation is committed. I therefore believe that we need to do more research. This is the beginning of the journey. The research to find out existing restorative processes and practices that can be built upon and can be enhanced to help communities disengage from violence and find better options that will make them feel that a sense of justice has been served, while at the same time working with the criminal justice system to see that it's functional, that it is effective, and for sure it provides, if not the justice itself, but a sense of justice to those who have been harmed. For the people who lost their loved ones, it's not to minimize the death of the loved ones. What can we do to ensure that we minimize the pain? The power is in the community. The power is in the collective. It's not about the criminal justice system failing. It's not about the restorative justice system and practices disappearing. It's about individual goodwill and collective efforts to find better alternatives, to provide some sense of justice, or what people may feel a sense of justice. This could start with just conversations. Conversations between those who committed the crimes and those who were the victims, or the survivors as we call them today. Those survivors, so far many of them have expressed the desire to have constructive conversations that will bring healing. It will not take away the harm, but it will provide some healing. These are the kind of initiatives that we want to promote. Restorative practices for transformational processes. I believe it's possible.